Chapter 4, Part 8. For a moment, Eiji had nothing to go on. No sight, no sound. Nothing. A moment later, his vision returned. All the lights came back on. It was hard to say which. When his eyes finally focused, he saw that the stone circle had completely inverted itself. Whoa! Hang on! What? No, that wasn't quite right. The stone circle hadn't inverted. Eiji found himself lying down on the floor. Lugamon grunted. Lugamon, you okay? Eiji said, jumping to his feet. Lugamon lay flat on the ground, struggling. I can't move. Something was very wrong. Ryudamon was also laid out, though that wasn't a new development. Lugamon and Dorumon lay inside the stone circle, as did Kosuke and Yulin's hololized forms. The system's shutdown must have knocked everyone unconscious. The interfaces on each of the prototype Digimon were still lit, but they were slowly dimming. Lugamon! Eiji shouted. The light in Lugamon's interface went out, and they lost consciousness. The light returned to their interface a moment later, signaling a reboot. This time, however, the interface was executing a ton of unintelligible code. What? Kosuke's voice began to tremble. He kept trying to restart his virtual monitor, only for it to crash each time, spewing a long string of error messages across his field of view. The source code decryption process had been cancelled without warning at the worst possible time. Good morning, friends, a voice said softly. The voice was gentle, familiar, like it was greeting them after a long day's work. But then, why good mo- Eiji spun around to face its source. Professor Ryusenji? Eiji said softly. It certainly looked like his silhouette. He stood with his back to his pupils. I'll take it from here, the professor responded. There he stood, dressed as he always did in the DDL laboratory. Professor? Yulin said, dazed. What are you doing? Why? Kosuke said in a haze, befuddled by the professor's sudden appearance. Why are you so surprised? He said in his distinctive cadence as he turned around. Somehow, Professor Tomonori Ryusenji stood before them in the source domain. Kosuke and Yulin quietly got to their feet, understandably tense. Their professor had just knocked them unconsciousness with a single phrase. Or was it code? After all, I asked you to raise these prototype Digimon for me, the professor continued. That moment had been a turning point in each of their lives. Now, I suppose I can do this at any point. But what a better time than now? Restrain. Ugh, what is this? Ah! Lugamon and Dorumon were now restrained by the exact same tool they'd used on Ryudamon. How did you do that? Dorumon shouted, stunned. Most Digimon, when conscious, were protected by their own security systems that made restraining them with software tools non-trivial. Ryudamon had been an easy capture only because they'd been knocked out first. What did I just say? I asked you to raise them for me. Did you think I was giving them to you? Professor Ryusenji said sternly. It was inside us from the beginning, Lugamon shouted. Doraemon's head whipped toward Lugamon, eyes wide. The only explanation for the restraint tool bypassing their onboard security was that it had been installed in the prototype Digimon from the start. "Did you tamper with Ryudamon?" Yulin asked, alarmed. "It's part of a suite of research tools implemented in each Digimon and each of your Digimon linkers. I did not mention all this when I gave them to you," the professor said nonchalantly. Eiji looked at his wrist. The Digimon linker was full of spyware. The constant health monitoring and logging of Lugamon's progress wasn't just for Eiji's benefit. It was getting beamed back to DDL. "I can also forcibly take control of the Digimon, if need be. Even if you're mind-linked. Research requires safeguards, wouldn't you agree? For example, if a valuable prototype were to, say, go berserk and turn into Hellugamon, that would be rather unfortunate. Wouldn't it, Eiji?" Professor Ryusenji turned towards Eiji, whose jaw went slack. "What you consider your Digimon are my tools, and I manage them as I see fit. Do I make myself clear?" With that, his virtual avatar walked to the center of the stone circle. The three prototype Digimon struggled futilely against their restraints. The prototype Digimon are meant to access the source domain's data, and the Digimon linkers are meant to serve as a network bridge between the digital world and the real world, he said softly, as a fuller view of the professor's plan dawned on him. "What is all that? Is that noise?" Eiji took note of an odd shimmer that ran over Professor Ryusenji's image every so often. Professor Ryusenji was hololizing himself via the combined projections from each of their Digimon linkers. He was nothing more than a video feed projected out into space. He lacked the same volume that Eiji and the others had on account of being properly hololized. Nevertheless, he, not Kosuke, was now in full control of Operation Tartarus. Rather, he always had been. The Digimon, the equipment, everyone used to interface with them, it was all under Professor Ryusenji's control. It was all right there in front of them, and worse, they'd agreed to the terms. "I was under the DDL's control," Lugamon said, trying to regain the last of their memory. It was coming back in fits and starts, but the demon wolf of the Castle of Nine Wolves recalled their capture in the wall slum at the hands of DDL employees. That, and the installation of a restraint tool in case the Digimon went berserk. They were as Fenrir, bound by Gleipnir in the legends of old. Naturally, this was all D4 classified. The plan was clever, to be sure. The restraints were disguised as research tools so the Digipolice wouldn't find them, if they even thought to look for them in the first place. Professor Ryusenji had never given Yulin any reason to doubt him, after all. Kosuke always saw him as his closest ally. They were to be family. "Lugamon," Doraemon said through a grimace. "You, me, Ryudamon. DDL managed all of us at one point or another. That's when they installed the restraint tool in us, either directly or through the new Digimon linker." Those were the only ways they could have bypassed the Digimon's security protocols. It's not so uncommon. Even humans have objects and implements left inside them during surgery that they never notice even as they heal. Professor Ryusenji added, though the example was of no use to the Digimon now. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Kosuke exploded, slamming his error-laden virtual monitor aside. He shot daggers at the professor's projection, but his tone was as petulant as any first-year student. Let me put it in a way you codecrackers would understand. Your story has now become mine. It really is that simple. He wasn't physically present in any meaningful way, but he was now in control. He'd code-cracked their story, their lives. And so long as the prototype Digimon remained the decryption key, it would be Professor Ryusenji who turned the page on this chapter. Now, watch closely. I'll do this one step at a time. He set to work. First, the data object connected to the interface on Doraemon's head, and code began flowing between them, restoring part of the signal. What are you doing? Kosuke bellowed. I think it's obvious. I'm decrypting the source domain's code. It's only right that I be the one to do it. Is it not? The professor said, glancing at Kosuke. Who better than Tomonori Ryusenji, foremost expert on the digital world, to take the next great leap in the field? Kosuke stood by helplessly while his partner Digimon was hijacked before his eyes. Accessing source domain code, came an announcement, stepping on the last few words of Professor Ryusenji's speech. It was a flat, effectless voice, cold and robotic. Was this the voice of the source domain itself? Lugamon! AG yelled, furiously typing away at his virtual monitor in a bid to regain control. It's not looking good, the wolf replied feebly. They were already giving up, still conscious, but unable to move. The system had completely taken over their body through their interface. Eiji struggled to forcibly regain control despite the fact that Professor Ryusenji was nothing more than a video feed who wasn't even mind-linked to the Digimon he now controlled. There was no way to cut the projection, let alone sever the professor's connection to the Digimon. What if they couldn't stop Professor Ryusenji at all? We're supposed to be on the same side, Kosuke shouted, desperate now. I want to save Saya too. Professor Ryusenji, please! Eiji yelled. He felt like a child trying to insert himself into an adult's conversation. What is it, Eiji? I'm rather busy. Oh, are you wondering what the incentive to digivolve Lugamon to their ultimate form was? Well, no! You have to listen to me! Huh. Alright then. I only heard from Tartarus. From Kosuke in passing. But the Saya, the woman who's DMIA and partner to the Black Agumon. She's your daughter, isn't she? Decrypting source domain code, the source domain intoned. The very next moment, the signal between the Digimon flickered, and the professor stalled. Nyeh. Doraemon grunted as they tried to stand up, defying their restraints. After the accident, I promised Kosuke I would look after him. Even once he dropped out of school and left the company. I promised I would do the same for Yulin, whatever she decided to do after she left. Tomonori said, explaining his cover-up of the accident in an effort to protect his pupils' futures. The two of you made me proud of my decision to invest so much in you. So, just think of this as me calling in the favor you owe me for granting you so much opportunity in life. This was the professor's big moment. His chance to usher in a revolution that would forever change humanity and the digital world. I don't see what that has to do with my question. You wouldn't. This was all before your time, anyhow, Professor Ryusenji said genially, brushing aside Eiji's attempts to insert himself in the conversation. But that's why you're going to save her, right? Kosuke's fiancé? Your own daughter? This was all wrong. Eiji and Kosuke were supposed to be helping Saya, Leon, and Pulsemon. That was the whole reason Eiji and Lugamon were doing any of this. So, why are you fighting, Kosuke? You're on the same side, like he said. Eiji didn't know whose side he was on anymore. You're a fascinating young man, Eiji. You appear completely oblivious, but you see everything so clearly at just the right time. What? Are you complimenting me? I like you. I really do. That's why I'm going to tell you everything. Even the things I've never told Kosuke. Okay? We'll start with the fact that I'm not the least bit interested in looking for that Black Agumon. But that's your daughter's partner, Digimon! What do you mean you don't... You gave Kosuke the stimulant to... What? Eiji felt like the bottom was dropping out of the whole world. Not the least bit interested, Kosuke said. He knew exactly what the professor meant by that turn of phrase. I mean it. What's lost is lost. The plan you've dedicated half your life to, Kosuke, is a monument to wasted effort, the professor bellowed. No, Tartarus! Think for a second! Don't let him break you! Doremon shouted, struggling against their restraints. His lack of interest in the Black Agumon, in his own DMIA daughter, had to be a ploy. Professor! Yulin interjected. What now? I've had a hunch for a long time. I can't stop thinking about it, no matter how hard I try, she said. Professor Ryusenji grinned. Your hunch may well be correct, officer. Without warning, an index appeared before them. A dome swept over the seemingly infinite expanse of the source domain, covered in information that flew overhead like constellations in a planetarium. Through a multi-layered projection of a tree, stretching onto infinity, growing wider and wider as it went, was a single, simple line of light. This is it. The Universal Directory Information Tree, the professor said, sifting through the data to arrive at a minute point, deep within the structure. Search complete, the source domain's voice intoned. A small bit of data appeared as it was decrypted. A spark. Bit by bit, a small pharaoh-like Digimon appeared, wreathed in crackling lightning. Pulsemon! What's Pulsemon doing here? Lugamon and Eiji's delight gave way to puzzlement. Pulsemon's face was completely blank, its eyes vacant. Well, what do you think? This is indeed the Pulsemon you and Lugamon were looking for, the professor said. Eiji swallowed hard. This is but a taste of what can be done with the control of the source domain's data. He continued, every word dripping with a sense of superiority. You mean we can search the entirety of the digital world from here? Yulin said in amazement. Here, in the depths of the digital world, where no human had ever tread, one could search for any Digimon by their identification code. Before anyone had time to process the power of what they'd witnessed, another light shot out in search of its target. Another form appeared before them. Eiji swallowed hard once more. The Black Agumon! Kosuke shouted. The form of a small, dinosaur-like Digimon floated before his eyes. It didn't look black in and of itself so much as the image itself appeared to be monochrome, like a creature from an old movie given three-dimensional form. As I suspected. Even if the mind linker perishes, the partner Digimon doesn't suffer the same fate. Professor Ryusenji said cynically. Wait, what did you just say? Eiji stammered. The words replayed over and over in his head. Even if the mind linker perishes? She's, Yulin said, her heart dropping as the hunch she'd done her best not to entertain proved to be true. She's dead. Professor Ryusenji opened a virtual monitor above his head. A video feed of Saya, ensconced in a capsule full of colored liquid, appeared before them. Saya! Yulin cried, tears welling in her eyes. The image blinked out of existence, like an old tube television turning off. It was all fake. Oh, yes. For quite some time now.